I actually haven't had much motivation to play Overwatch in the last few weeks. And I'll be honest, I've kind of had to push myself to even find it in the last few months. I seriously love the game, and I've loved it ever since I played it on the first free weekend on Xbox way back in 2017. My feelings for it don't change the fact that Overwatch seriously does need to evolve. At its best, Overwatch feels like everything that TF2 should have been. It feels like what TF2 walked for so that Overwatch could run. It's the best of it, a hero shooter that rewards good game sense and team play, sometimes over mechanical skill. Unfortunately, in my, and I think a lot of others' opinions, Overwatch really hasn't been at its best for a long, long time. However, usually this is where the conversation stops. People say Overwatch is dead, it's done, and they stop. And frankly, I'm tired of hearing others and myself say that all the time without proposing a solution. So that's what I'm gonna do. First off, I wanna show you guys what actually incited me to make this video, which is the recent communication the devs made with us, that little snippet of Overwatch 2 that they showed for us. And obviously, the largest part of said announcement was the announcement of the removal of the second tank role. If you haven't seen the clip, here it is.
Overwatch 2 will be played with 2 teams of 5 players.
As you may have gathered after watching that clip, I do not concur with Blizzard's thinking on how to change Overwatch for the better. In my opinion, this just is not the solution to fix the hemorrhaging player base. However, it is a solution, which is more than I've offered thus far. So I'm not exactly all that credible right now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna figure out a solution to fix the game completely. Maybe not every single thing, but the majority of the problems and bring players back. However, before you can determine a solution, you must first determine the problem. So in this first video, we're going to be doing an in-depth analysis regarding the complications that Overwatch currently and has previously faced in the last 5 years or so. We're going to figure out the root causes of those problems. However, we're not going to be offering solutions in this video. In the second video, we're going to be proposing a full rework of the game. Nearly every facet of the game is going to change, not just how the game plays and how it feels, but fundamentally the game does need to change in at least a few small ways. Obviously, the most important goal of the rework we're proposing is to make changes to bring players back and make the game better than it has ever been, or make it feel like at least how it did at launch. But what I'm sticking to is that we do this whilst keeping and enhancing the best parts of Overwatch as it is, and as it has been.
He plays video games all day, and his wife is fed up.
All right, so we're going to start with the symptoms, and we're actually going to play doctor here. And as a doctor would diagnose someone, they don't immediately give them some pills to pop and say, all right, head home. First, they diagnose the symptoms, then the underlying problems, then they offer a solution. So let's start with our first symptom, which is going to be long queue times.
Perseverance is the key.
Currently, the only way to guarantee an under 5-minute queue time is to queue as tank, and it kind of has to be during peak hours. Even in quick play, if you decide to play the damage role, you're going to be waiting upwards of 10 minutes just to get into a game. That's just on PC. I'm not really sure what the player base is like on most of the consoles, at least on Xbox. I'm usually getting a 15 to 18 minute queue on the weekends during peak hours. It's insane. I hadn't really realized how big of a problem this was until I actually played Apex the other day. I wasn't really into the game. I don't like battle royales all that much, but I wanted to give it a try. However, I was astounded by the queue times. They were instantaneous, which kind of makes sense for a game like that. It has a huge player base, and it's not as intricate as Overwatch where you have role queue and stuff like that. It's just you queue in, everyone is doing the same thing. All you got to think about is skill level. But this got me thinking. I was playing with a more casual friend of mine who plays BRs like that, Warzone, you know. And when I was astounded by the queues, he didn't really understand. Fast queues to him are to be expected in a game. He's used to it. And this kept jogging my noggin, and I realized Overwatch is never going to get players back, even if it makes somewhat big changes, if it doesn't fix the queues. There's no way on earth a new player who's just trying out the game is going to wait 10 minutes in a queue, 10 minutes plus. Before they even get to play the game, they're going to be soured and probably not continue to engage with it and just not play. So that point actually does lead into our second symptom of our patient, which is lack of new players.
It's in the refrigerator.
I'm not going to speak any more on queue times, but it is, of course, a major problem for why those new players aren't going to continue to engage with the game. It's just like on TikTok, if you were watching a video and you had to wait upwards of a minute for it to load just for a 30-second video, you're probably not going to watch that video, and you're probably not going to continue to use the platform as well.
I saw that you wanted. Don't lie to me, Walt. You sussy baka.
Now, let's go off facts and figures. I don't want to just spout all this like it's my opinion. PC Gamer actually reported that Overwatch grew by 10 million players over the last year or so. Even in that article, they do kind of dissect that it may not be perfect numbers, and it probably does not directly correlate with actual new people playing the game. So I can't speak to if that growth is real or not, and I don't have a ton of cold, hard figures to back up that the growth isn't, but I'm just going to offer these tidbits, and I'll let you make your own decision on how close those numbers are to the actual growth of the game and what you've been seeing in it. Overwatch is generally hanging in, like, I think the 4th or 5th row of most watched games on Twitch, which is kind of rough for a competitive game like Overwatch. The game has not had a real true event added since 2017. I'm not talking about repeats of Lucio Ball and the Archives event. I'm talking a new event. A full new event, not just one of those things where you get a skin for playing 9 games or something like that. Overwatch has not had a new hero in over a year, which sounds crazy, but Echo has been in the game for over a year. We have had nothing since then. And Overwatch, a PvP game, there's no PvE, there's just PvP, has not had a new map in 2 years. In the last 2 years, we've actually lost maps because of the loss of Paris and Horizon, which, I mean, I'm not against that, but we have lost maps. A little thing I also did want to add in that's not in the script is Overwatch has never worked together with another brand or type of media. You see games like Fortnite, they always have Marvel skins or all kinds of insane partnerships. Warzone just had Rambo added and I think Jason Statham or something. Even Smite. I would say Smite is one of the lesser played MOBAs and stuff. Even Smite has had just in the last year, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's insane. We could easily have partnerships like that, and we just don't. Why? All right, I'm going to stop going on that tangent. We'll actually speak more about those partnerships and how it ties into another certain part of the game in a bit. Finally, in terms of tidbits on if the game has grown, Overwatch League, I know people are going to talk about that. I don't think it's grown all that much, especially after it's moved to YouTube, but I don't have any figures on that, so I will not speak to that. I'm really not trying to rag on the game. Like I said, I love it. But objectively, new content is one of the best ways to bring players into the game. And Blizzard has not done a good job of that. And I do know the argument you are probably wanting to present to me. I'm even going to demonstrate this argument in the next clip with my response. Oh, come on. What about all the content in Overwatch 2, you dingus? I don't even know why I'm watching this. I'm wasting my time. I cannot teach him. This viewer has no patience.
You will learn patience.
Much anger in them. They placed in silver.
Was I any different when you told me?
They are not ready. What? I am ready. I can watch the rest of the video. Mom, tell him I'm... Okay, so this is the final symptom. There haven't been that many of those, but we're going to be moving on to problems after, which I feel are a little bit different. So this is a very general one, but the game just doesn't feel fun a lot of the time.
Shh. The adults are talking.
Now, people say this often, so we're going to establish a sort of soft definition for what a lack of fun is in a couple of categories for what takes away from people's enjoyment of the game. First, a little thing to preface it. Overwatch in a vacuum is very, very fun. We saw this fun in a vacuum when Overwatch first launched, before people had knowledge of metas and all kinds of stuff about the game and little things they could do. People loved this game. In fact, when I was talking to my friend about this game, he said, what happened to Overwatch after 2018? I haven't heard anything about it ever since. Everybody was playing it and then they stopped. And there are reasons for that, so let's get into it. So the categories we're going to be talking about for lack of fun are going to be players, gameplay, and rewards that attribute to it. So first, we're going to dissect the most common reasons, I feel, one of the most common reasons that people do not have fun in a game, which is because of other players. Some examples, I'm going to be looking at my doc for this, but some examples are going to be one tricks, throwers, or even just straight up toxic players, and that's just on your team. On the opposing team, you could end up against hackers or smurfs or things like that. The issue that we're going to run into with talking about these are that we just can't really control a lot of that stuff with changes to the game. It's easy to say, oh, just make the cheat engine better, or just don't allow smurfs. But that's not really conducive to offering a good solution to fixing the game. What I can offer, though, is a soft solution to these, in that when we fix the population issue with the game and the growth issues, we're basically going to be killing two birds with one stone. Because of the dilution of the player base, you're going to end up running into smurfs and hackers and one-tricks a lot less just because there are just that many more players. The ratio is lower. With that in mind, let's move on to one of the things we can fix, which are gameplay problems. So a definition for what we're using in this context is it's going to be non-bug issues that affect the core gameplay loop. A quick, easy example is going to be the 2CP game mode. Most people I see and most streamers I watch do not like 2CP. It is their least favorite game mode, and myself as well. 2CP is kind of inherently flawed as a game mode, and it sounds reasonable on paper, but in practice, it seems to almost always lead to very one-sided, unfun gameplay. I don't want to talk too much about it and go too in-depth because I want to go in-depth on one of the biggest issues that I think players feel plagues the game, which is crowd control or CC. Players love to say, oh, there's too much CP in Overwatch, and then their only solution is make it go away. And the problem of CC can kind of be attributed to the devs taking the easy way out when it comes to solutions to problems. And that's actually a big part of what our proposed fixes are going to involve, in that there are no easy fixes to problems in Overwatch. We'll emphasize that more in a second, but let's talk a bit about what Overwatch has become and what it has been. Overwatch has always been a game of counterpicks, a lot like how a MOBA works, where when someone builds something else, somebody will build another item. At least I think that's how it works. I don't really like playing MOBAs, so if I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. And the game has gradually become more extremist in how those counterpicks work. And that it can definitely be seen in the devs' philosophy towards fixing problems over the last couple years. It has waned the last year or two, but let's talk about an example. Our example is Tracer. In the first year or two of Overwatch, how you countered Tracer wasn't as simple as just going to a hero. Mind you, still would go McCree, and he would definitely be a good, counter to Tracer. But Tracer could play outside his range and allow him to not act as a hard counter. Tracers obviously want to target support, so supports would have to soft counter in how they played, not what they played. You could obviously go Mercy, and Mercy can easily get away from Tracer, but that's how she counters Tracer and how she plays, not in one ability usage, but it's a consistent countering, not boom, you go this character, the other character is no longer relevant. This all changed when Brigitte was added to the game. Post Brig, if the enemy had a Tracer, at least for the first year or so of her being in the game, you just went Brig. That's all you did. Instead of really having to play a different way, you would swap to another character, and as soon as that character was changed to, playing Tracer just wasn't really possible, at least in her prime range and her prime playing areas. And I hope that did serve as a good example of the counter-extremist philosophy that Blizzard had took for about a year or two of Overwatch's of their dev balancing. And you could see this ebb and flow into other parts of the game. When GOATS was such a big problem, before roll queue, they just made damage stronger and stronger and stronger. They didn't know what to do. And because of that, post the GOATS nerf, hitscan was and still is really strong. It's really tough to look at top 500 and find anyone that doesn't end up maining McCree or Ashe or Widow. Like we were talking about before, CC was actually a symptom of this over-reliance on extremist counterpicks. Because when dive got too strong, like characters like Winston, or even now we have Hammond or Doomfist, when they got too strong, the solution, the counterpick was CC, like McCree or Brig. So that's what the devs did. And now we're at a point where CC's too strong, and it's probably going to get toned down a bit before Overwatch 2 comes out. And if we want to fix problems like that, it kind of ends up with us taking a microscopic look at pretty much every hero and their kit and how it's going to work in our new Overwatch that we propose. But this is also a reason that the devs are so slow on changes, or at least a part of it, because they've come to realize, I think, in the last few years that there is an ebb and flow to their changes. Changes are a lot like if you throw a rock in the ocean. When you throw a rock in the ocean, it makes a wave and it affects a billion different things in that ecosystem. And it's the very same in Overwatch. And say what you will about it, Brig as a character affected the game in a massive way. She's not going to go away. She can't be taken out. She's in the game. But she fundamentally changed the game. And I'm willing to bet that with what the devs have learned about their extremist changes when it comes to counters and stuff, Brigitte would be a very different hero if she were to come out now instead of however many years ago it was. All right, so we presented a billion problems. Let's do a little micro solution and put in a change that people want. Let's say we just remove nearly all CC at this moment. McCree's stun doesn't do anything anymore. It just does 5 damage. Briggs bash doesn't do anything. Anna's sleep doesn't do anything. You get the message. It would be great. You know, nobody gets stunned anymore, and getting stunned sucks. It doesn't feel good in a game like Overwatch or any first-person game. So, you know, this is great. Goats is dead. Well, let's talk about what would happen in reality. Like I said, Overwatch is cause and effect. So once you take out CC, characters that are hindered by it are meta. That means you've got a Winston, Hammond, Doomfist, Tracer meta. Would it be fun for a bit? Yeah, probably, if you're not a support. But a month later, everyone would be upset and CC would probably come back. The reason I went on that little tangent is to explain why so much thought needs to be put into any change that comes into this game. Let alone when we propose fundamental changes like we're going to be talking about a little later in this video and more in the next one. And this does tie into why earlier I kept ragging on the game and why it's in such a bad place, which is because these big changes, they do need to happen, and fundamental changes, because while they're difficult to implement and while they can cause a lot of further issues down the line, this game cannot continue on without massive changes. All right, I spent a lot of time on CC, so in the interest of said time, I'm just going to list out the rest of the gameplay issues. And the reason I'm doing this is so that you have this in mind for the next video and for when you're saying stuff in the comments. So the list is of problems: stale metas, tanks being too boring to play, supports being too boring to play, low skill heroes, too few tanks and supports to play, too few characters, and certain heroes being too strong and some being too weak. All right, so our final problem category is going to be rewards. And let me emphasize, when I'm talking about rewards, I don't mean gold skins and loot boxes. While their place in the game is certainly an issue, what I'm talking about is the rewards concerning good gameplay. And it's an interesting discussion because you have to think about it in the frame of Overwatch. And when we're talking about the frame of Overwatch, it's easy to pick out a very big offender in this concern, and that's the medal system. The medal system, as it stands, is at its very best a super short little dopamine hit when you see that you're gold something, and it's very untelling on your impact to the game in all reality. At its worst, the medal system, and generally it is on the worst side, ends up just being a justification for a toxic player to be shitty to their teammates. Overwatch, as we know, is a super complex game like we just talked about. Good Overwatch gameplay is a lot more nuanced than good Call of Duty gameplay or something like that. It really isn't like another shooter where you can just base the metrics off of kills and damage done. Overwatch is a lot more nuanced, but the medal system still emphasizes kills and damage over everything else. Let's put some context to this. How is a new or a lower elo player who is stuck playing as Reinhardt, unfortunately, how are they supposed to understand that proper shielding of their team, creating and taking space, and the taking of good opportune engagements is what makes good tank gameplay, when the only metric that the game is showing them is how many kills they've gotten and how much damage they've done? That isn't conducive to a rewarding Overwatch experience as a tank or support player, or even DPS sometimes. So how have we gone 5 years without a single change to one of the only in-game reward systems that actively penalizes players who queue for the most boring roles in the game? Sorry, I'm upset. Let me go play some mystery heroes and go calm down. All right, so with the gameplay session, I'm just gonna list the rest of the problems because I don't want to sit here and talk about every single subject. So the list of them goes skins and loot boxes and gold skins, like we talked about. A problem I do want to talk about for a moment is poor monetization of the game. Blizzard has done a very poor job of monetizing it. How many people do you know in 2021, this is the year the video was made, that buy loot boxes? I'm willing to bet probably nobody. People don't really care about the skins all that much and the loot boxes. So the game isn't making money. And I'm sure you've seen that they want to add a battle pass and stuff like that, and people talking about adding a battle pass to Overwatch. But there are better ways to monetize the game, and the game does need to be monetized, or Activision and then down the line Blizzard is not going to care about it, as they kind of do now. They don't care about it because they're working on Overwatch 2, a better way to monetize Overwatch. All right, and my last little parts for the list of issues with rewards are going to be lack of competitive rewards and there being no new Symmetra event skin in the last 2 years. And no new event Symmetra skin in 2 years. Wait, why is that in the script? I don't care about that. Since I've spent the last who knows how long criticizing nearly every facet of the game, I want to clarify, I love the game. I love Overwatch. I would still say that Overwatch is my favorite game of all time, and it will probably continue to be even with all of its faults. So with that in mind, let's talk about Overwatch's unique benefits that we need to keep in mind when we're proposing these changes and fundamental changes to the game that we need to keep in. So Overwatch is a hero FPS MOBA in terms of like just an encapsulation of its gameplay category. To me, what this most importantly means is when you're in a game and you're playing whatever characters, that in some cases, game sense can trump mechanical skill. An easy example is when you're on a projectile hero or something, if you have good game sense and you are skilled with said hero,
it's high noon.
You should be able to outplay a hit scam hero who just has good mechanical skill with your knowledge of the game and the hero.
An excellent fight.
And that's actually somewhat of a problem right now in that Hitscan dominates because Hitscan is too strong for what Overwatch is. How often do you see projectile heroes? Like, you have Genji and Junkrat, who are two of the more fun heroes in the game, who see very little playtime now because projectiles just really aren't that good. But that is one of the positives of Overwatch, even though I've kind of ragged on it. Let's go on the next one. Team play is emphasized and rewarded. So I'll put this in an example with tanks. If you're playing Double Bubble, that's Monkey Zarya. You have good comms, you have great ability usage, your Zarya's bubbling you in for energy, and then right as that wears off, Monkey's using Bubble, and you're using it to get picks, and you have good synergy with the team, the game rewards you for that. Now, this may be a little controversial because some people do like the announcement of 5v5, and this is because when you're on the opposite side, and you're opposing a really great Double Bubble team, and you're stuck with a Hammond that just got the game and they're spinning around, and a Hog that's hard throwing, it doesn't feel good to have an opposing team have a cohesive tank line because your tank line sucks. So that's why one of our fundamental changes we're going to be touching on is adding more individual agency to every player in the game. Because while promoting team play and synergy is great, and it is what Overwatch is kind of all about, I think we've learned in the last few years that Overwatch needs to promote a little bit more individual play, which is what 5v5 is trying to do, but I think it goes too heavy on it, and we'll talk about that. Another great feature of Overwatch that we should keep in mind is the hero skill ceilings and floors. It isn't unique to Overwatch, but it is a big part of what makes it special. What I always think about is Counter-Strike. I've always wanted to get good at Counter-Strike, but if I want to get good at it, obviously I have to learn the maps and I have to learn a lot of stuff about it, but I have to get good at gun sprays and how to properly play with my weapon to even make it good. Versus in Overwatch, you can pick up a hero that requires effort to be good at initially, like Ana. When you start with Ana, you're not going to be very effective. However, on the other side, if you don't have much time to dedicate to the game to get good at Ana, you could pick up a hero like Moira, who at the same time also has a high skill ceiling, contrary to people's belief, but she has a lower skill floor. So you can pick up Moira and immediately be providing value to your team. And this means without a significant investment in the game, even though the game relies on team play, I still won't be a detriment to them, even though I just don't have much time in it. And keeping this in the game is essential to facilitating that extra player agency and letting people feel more individualistic and feel that they have more impact on the game as a whole. So every single one of those positives I mentioned, I bet to a lot of people, they feel like negatives, and that's okay. And let's think about it from the perspective of Blizzard. Video games are a business. As a business, your first objective is to please as many people as possible and to create as large a base as possible to make as much money as possible. And that's why one of our fundamental changes to the game is that it needs to become more casual. And I don't mean that we should make all the heroes a lot easier so that people can pick them up, or make low skill heroes way stronger so that new players feel more powerful. That's too far of a detraction, and that's actually why I mentioned those good parts of Overwatch. And the reason why I'm talking about making the game more casual at such a specific point is because once that occurs, like a lot of the issues like the queue times and more players being in the game, once the game is more casual and casual players feel more comfortable picking it up and playing it, those issues will be rectified. And I just wanted to directly mention the one other change to the game's core philosophy is that heroes will be more individualistic in how they operate. And that's one of our trade-offs, in that since we're not doing 5v5 and we're keeping those tank duos and combos in and keeping that synergy possible, the game needs to become more individualistic than 5v5 is changing as a whole because of that not happening, if that makes sense. A great example is Reinhardt. Reinhardt has nearly no agency unless you're very, very good at the hero, which means Reinhardt, his value becomes near null if your team isn't acting on what you're setting up. What little agency he does currently have and what he can do on his own is kind of nullified by the amount of CC in the game and other aspects, but mainly CC. And in order to fix scenarios like this, whilst keeping in mind the best parts of those synergies with Reinhardt and tanks like Zarya and how he synergizes with her, we can't allow him too much agency, because if we lean him that far, he'll become too strong not to pick. And we've seen that where when Reinhardt's too strong, there's no reason to play another main tank because Reinhardt's just so good. But if he doesn't get enough agency, he's kind of in a place where he is now, in that new players don't feel good playing him. And even seasoned players, a lot of the time, when their team isn't picking up on what they're putting down and not communicating, they're still not going to have fun, even in the highest levels of the game. I'd actually like to bounce off of that real quick and go back to the whole part of getting more casual players into the game, because like what we talked about with Reinhardt, with him not having much agency, casual players and players coming from other games, they're used to having lots and lots of agency in what they do. They're not used to having their destiny in the game out of their control. If you're playing a battle royale like Fortnite or something, you're completely reliant on your own skill and what you do. But if they were to come over to Overwatch and play Reinhardt, they'd feel horrible because the outcome of the game isn't based really all that much on what they're doing. It's based on how their team is performing. Because even if they do their very best, they may not get rewarded for that. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of hopefully a good amount of the issues plaguing Overwatch currently and what has plagued it before. So my final statement is going to be on my aversion to the removal of the second tank. I know I've been nagging on it and whining, but I haven't talked about exactly why I hate it. I've only talked about it a little bit. So let's talk about the positives of it. It will increase tank agency. With there being one tank, they have room to make that one tank a lot stronger. And thus they'll feel a lot better to play because they're so strong. And it also removes one of the least queued roles in the game, that second tank. It makes it a lot easier to get faster queues, thus making it easier for casuals to get involved. So why do I hate it so much? This is because it completely desecrates one of Overwatch's most basic tenets, which is rewarding team play and synergy. And in all reality, it isn't just desecrating it, it's outright removing one of the largest aspects of said team play, which is those tank duos. Tank combos, when they're at their best, are one of the best feeling parts of the game. In my opinion, I've been playing a lot of tank recently. Nothing feels better than when you just kind of vibe with it, when you're playing Winston or Ryan and you vibe with your Zarya, or when you're playing Roadhog and your Orisa's just making awesome pulls and you're getting hooks off of them. Nothing feels better than that. Those combos and that synergy is what sets Overwatch apart from other games and other shooters and other competitive games. That's why it needs to stay, at least for me. While I'm in agreement with the team that tanks need a fundamental change because they do not feel good right now and people obviously are not queuing. They see those numbers. They know people aren't queuing. It needs to change, but this isn't how it should change. And we'll be talking about the solutions in the next video. I actually did want to finish the second video and post both of these at the same time, but I felt like it wouldn't be fair to not include all you guys in this discussion. And hopefully I don't know if I've mentioned it, but Overwatch isn't just for me. My opinions aren't the only ones that matter. So I want to hear your guys's. I like to think that I've done a pretty good job of encapsulating the issues with the game currently, but I want your thoughts. If there's anything I missed, or honestly you think one of my issues I have with the game is flat out wrong or something, let me know with a well thought out comment in the comments below. Let me know. However, one caveat, please do it constructively. Writing "this sucks" is not as insightful as you may think it is while you're writing it. Finally, the script for this video is going to be in the description below, so if you're interested in taking a look at it and reading it over, making some edits or something, feel free to take a look at it. Otherwise, thanks for watching.